Captain Park Woo-jin stood at the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony Bridge and watched the alien ship approach through the view screen. His hands were steady on the console, but his heart beat faster than usual. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. First contact with an intelligent alien species. The Nexari ship looked like a giant crystal floating in space. It sparkled with blue and green lights that pulsed in patterns too complex for human eyes to follow. The ship was 3 times larger than the Harmony Bridge, but it moved with surprising grace through the void between stars. "Captain, they are requesting permission to dock," said Communications Officer Kim Minji from her station. Her voice was calm and professional, but Woo-jin could hear the excitement underneath. They were all excited. They were making history today. "Grant permission," Woo-jin replied. "Send them docking bay coordinates, and remind all crew members to follow first. Contact protocols exactly as we practiced." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Security Chief Lee Hyun-woo checked his weapon systems one final time, not because he expected trouble, but because that was his job. Cultural Liaison. Choi Yuna reviewed her notes about Nexari customs and language patterns. Everyone had a role to play in this historic moment. Down in the main conference room, the crew had prepared everything perfectly. The long table was set with Earth's finest diplomatic gifts, rare minerals, works of art, and samples of human music and literature. The room smelled of fresh flowers from the ship's garden. Soft lighting created a warm and welcoming atmosphere. Max, the ship's German shepherd, lay quietly in his favorite spot near the corner of the room. The big brown dog had been with the crew for 2 years now. He was more than just a pet or mascot. Max was family. He helped the crew deal with stress during long missions in deep space. When someone felt homesick or scared, Max would come over and put his head on their lap. His warm brown eyes seemed to understand human feelings better than most humans did. The dog had been specially chosen for this mission. Earth Command knew that first contact would be stressful for the crew. They needed Max's calming presence more than ever. The German shepherd had been trained for space travel and diplomatic situations. He knew how to stay quiet during important meetings and how to sense when humans needed comfort. 10 minutes until the Nexari delegation boards our ship, announced Minji over the communication system. Her voice echoed through the corridors of the Harmony Bridge. Yuna knelt down beside Max and scratched behind his ears. "You ready for this, boy? You're about to meet some very special visitors." Max wagged his tail and licked her hand. His calm energy helped settle her nerves. The crew took their positions in the conference room. Woo-jin wore his best dress uniform, with all his medals and ribbons. The others were dressed formally too. First impressions mattered in diplomacy. They wanted to show respect for this historic occasion. The airlock hissed as it opened. The first Nexari stepped through and the humans held their breath. The alien was taller than any human, nearly 8 feet in height. Its body looked like it was made of living crystal that shifted between blue and purple colors. Where a human would have a face, the Nexari had a smooth surface that rippled with patterns of light. 3 more Nexari followed the first one into the ship. They moved in a flowing way that reminded the humans of dancers or swimmers. Their feet made no sound on the metal floor of the corridor. Ambassador Velthar was the leader of the Nexari group. The translation device around its neck spoke in a voice that sounded like musical chimes. "Greetings, humans of Earth. We come in peace and friendship. This is a day of great joy for both our species. Welcome aboard the Harmony Bridge," replied Captain Woo-jin. "We are honored by your visit. Please follow us to the conference room where we can begin our discussions." The group walked slowly through the ship's corridors. The Nexari looked at everything with what seemed like curiosity. Their light patterns flickered faster when they saw human artwork on the walls. They paused to examine the photographs of Earth's landscapes and cities. When they entered the conference room, Max lifted his head from his resting spot. He looked at the strange visitors with interest but showed no fear. His tail gave a small wag. The dog had always been friendly with strangers. The Nexari noticed Max immediately. Their light patterns changed to brighter colors. "What is this small creature?" asked one of the aliens. The translation made its voice sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "That is Max. explained Yuna with a smile. He is what we call a dog. He is our companion and friend. Dogs have lived with humans for thousands of years. They are very important to us. The Nexari moved closer to get a better look at Max. The dog stood up and wagged his tail more enthusiastically. He had always been good at making new friends. The creature seems to display affection, observed Ambassador Velthar. This is interesting. We have not encountered such relationships between different species before. Dogs are loyal and loving, said Wu Jin. They protect us and comfort us. In return, we care for them and treat them as members of our families. Max here has been with our crew for many missions. He helps keep our spirits up during long journeys. Through space. The youngest Nexari in the group was called Crixnall. Its light patterns were more aggressive and sharp compared to the others. It studied Max with what seemed like suspicion. The small creature could be dangerous, it said through the translator. It shows its teeth. Yuna laughed gently. Max is not dangerous at all. When dogs show their teeth like that, it means they are happy. We call it smiling. He likes meeting new people. The formal part of the meeting began. Both sides exchanged gifts and speeches about friendship between their species. The Nexari brought beautiful crystal sculptures that sang when touched. The humans presented books, music, and samples of Earth's finest artwork. Max settled down near Yuna's chair as the talking continued. The dog dozed peacefully while the two species discussed trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Sometimes crew members would reach down and pet him gently. The Nexari watched these interactions with growing fascination. Your bond with this creature is deeper than we first understood, said Ambassador Velthar during a break in the negotiations. In our society, we do not form such connections with other life forms. Perhaps that is something our species can teach each other about, suggested Captain Wu Jin. Humans have learned much from our relationships with animals like Max. They teach us about loyalty, unconditional love, and living in the present moment. The meeting was going better than anyone had hoped. Both sides seemed genuinely interested in building a friendship between their species. The future looked bright for human and Nexari relations. Max stretched and yawned, completely unaware that he was about to become the most important dog in galactic history. The negotiations had been going well for 3 hours. Captain Park Woo-jin felt more hopeful about humanity's future than he had in years. The Nexari seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. They asked thoughtful questions about human, culture, and technology. They shared stories about their own civilization that fascinated the human crew. Ambassador Velthar had just finished explaining how the Nexari created their beautiful crystal ships when Communications Officer Kim Minji announced a short break. We will resume in 15 minutes, she said. Please feel free to stretch your legs and refresh yourselves. The humans stood up from the conference table and began moving around the room. Security Chief Lee Hyun-woo walked to the viewport to look out at the stars. Cultural Liaison Choi Yuna gathered her notes and data tablets. Captain Wu Jin stepped over to speak quietly with his officers about how well the meeting was progressing. Max had been sleeping peacefully under the table for most of the negotiations. The sound of chairs moving and people walking around woke him up. The German shepherd stretched his legs and yawned widely. His tail began wagging as he looked around at all the familiar faces of his human family. The dog was thirsty after his long nap. His water bowl was near the far wall of the conference room, close to where the Nexari delegation was standing. Max trotted across the room with his usual friendly confidence. His nails clicked softly on the metal floor as he walked. The Nexari watched the dog approach. Ambassador Velthar's light pattern showed curiosity and interest. 2 of the other aliens stepped slightly aside to give Max room to reach his water bowl. They had been observing human and dog interactions all morning and found the relationship fascinating. But Crixnall was different from the other Nexari. The youngest member of their delegation had shown signs of impatience and aggression throughout the meeting. Its light patterns were always sharper and more erratic than the others. It had questioned every human custom and seemed suspicious of everything it saw. As Max walked past the Nexari group, his tail wagging happily, Crixnall suddenly stepped backward. The alien's crystalline body flashed bright red with alarm. In the Nexari homeworld, when creatures showed their teeth and moved their rear appendages rapidly, it meant they were preparing to attack. "Threat detected," Crixnall announced loudly, through its translator. The musical voice now sounded harsh and discordant. "The creature displays aggressive behavior patterns." Captain Wu Jin looked up from his conversation with concern. "What's wrong?" "Max is just getting some water. He's completely harmless." But Crixnall was not listening to the human explanations. In its young and inexperienced mind, the approaching dog represented a clear and present danger to the Nexari delegation. The alien had been trained to respond quickly to threats. It had been taught that hesitation could mean death in dangerous situations. Max was only 3 feet away from the Nexari when Crixnall drew its weapon. The plasma gun appeared in the alien's crystalline hand faster than any human eye could follow. The weapon hummed with deadly energy as it powered up. "No, wait," shouted Yuna as she realized what was happening. She started running toward Max, but she was too far away. Ambassador Velther also sensed the danger and began to speak, but Crixnall had already made its decision. The young Nexari pointed the plasma weapon at the approaching dog and fired without hesitation. The energy beam struck Max in the chest with a brilliant flash of blue light. The German Shepherd's happy expression changed to confusion for just a moment before his eyes went dark. His body collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the suddenly silent conference room. Smoke rose from the burned fur on Max's chest. The dog's tail, which had been wagging with joy just seconds before, lay completely still. His brown eyes stared at nothing. The friendly, loyal companion who had brought comfort to countless humans during their long journey through space was gone forever. The conference room fell into absolute silence. Not a single human moved or spoke. They all stared at Max's lifeless body lying on the cold metal floor. The cheerful diplomatic atmosphere of the meeting vanished instantly, replaced by something much darker and more dangerous. Captain Wu Jin had been looking at his data tablet when the shot was fired. He heard the weapon discharge and looked up to see the aftermath. His tablet slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers and crashed to the floor. The sound of breaking plastic seemed impossibly loud in the terrible quiet that had fallen over the room. Kim Minji had been organizing her communication equipment when Max died. She dropped everything and took a step toward the dog's body, then stopped. Her hands began to shake. Her face went completely white as she realized what had just happened. Li Hyunwoo's trained soldier instincts kicked in immediately. His hand moved toward his sidearm before he could think about it, but then he stopped himself. Starting a firefight would not bring Max back. It would only make everything worse. His hand trembled as he forced himself to move it away from his weapon. Yuna was the closest to Max when he died. She had been running toward him, trying to prevent exactly what had just happened. Now she dropped to her knees beside the dog's body. She reached out to touch him, then pulled her hand back. Tears began flowing down her face, but she made no sound. Ambassador Velthar's light patterns showed deep confusion and concern. The alien leader looked from the dead dog to the silent humans and back again. "We apologize for the misunderstanding," it said through the translator. Crixnall believed the creature was preparing to attack. It was acting to protect the delegation. None of the humans responded. They continued staring at Max's body in complete silence. Crixnall's light patterns showed satisfaction and relief. "The threat has been eliminated," it announced proudly. "The delegation is now safe from harm." Still no human spoke. Captain Wu Jin finally moved. He walked slowly across the room until he stood over Max's body. He looked down at the dog who had been with them for so many missions, who had comforted them through difficult times, who had never hurt anyone in his entire life. When Wu Jin looked up at the Nexari delegation, his face was completely expressionless. His voice was quiet and steady when he finally spoke. "The negotiations are over. Please return to your ship immediately." Ambassador Velthar's patterns flickered with confusion. "Surely we can discuss this misunderstanding. The creature was perceived as a threat. Our young officer was following proper security protocols." "Leave," said Wu Jin. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute finality. "Leave now." The Nexari tried to continue the conversation, but every human in the room had gone silent again. They would not respond to any questions or comments. They would not look at the aliens. They simply stood in their terrible quiet, surrounding the body of their murdered friend. After several minutes of futile attempts at communication, the Nexari delegation finally left the conference room. They walked through the corridors of the Harmony Bridge in confused silence, escorted by security guards who refused to speak to them. When the airlock sealed behind the departing aliens, the humans were finally alone with their grief. But still, none of them spoke. The silence that had begun when Max died continued to grow, spreading through the ship like a living thing. They did not yet know that this silence would soon spread far beyond their small vessel, reaching every human settlement in the galaxy. The emergency transmission from the Harmony Bridge reached Earth Command exactly 6 hours after Max died. Admiral Seo Jinwoo was eating dinner with his wife when the priority alert flashed on his personal communicator. He read Captain Park Woo-jin's report 3 times before the full meaning sank in. "They killed the dog," he said quietly to himself. His wife looked up from her meal with concern, but Jinwoo was already standing up and reaching for his uniform jacket. "I have to go to headquarters, immediately." Within an hour, the Admiral was in the Secure Communications Center at Earth Command. He called an emergency meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Diplomatic Corps. As the senior officers filed into the briefing room, Jinwoo could see the same expression on every face. They all understood what had happened. They all knew what it meant. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Admiral began, "we have a situation. The Nexari have killed Max." The room fell silent. Everyone knew about Max. The German Shepherd had become famous throughout human space as the first Earth dog to participate in an alien first contact mission. Children on dozens of colonies had followed his story. His picture was on school walls, and in government offices across the galaxy. General Kim Hye-jin spoke first. "What are your orders, sir?" Admiral Jinwoo looked around the room at the faces of humanity's military leaders. These were hard people who had fought wars and made difficult decisions, but they all had the same look in their eyes now. Cold anger mixed with deep sadness. "Send word to all human settlements, ships, and stations," he said slowly. "Effective immediately, all contact with Nexari vessels and representatives is suspended. No communication, no trade, no cooperation of any kind." "For how long?" asked Commander Bae Jun, who was attending the meeting by video link from his frontier colony. "Until further notice," replied the Admiral, "and make sure everyone understands. This is not a suggestion or a request. This is a direct order from Earth Command." The news spread through human space faster than any official message could travel. Crew members on the Harmony Bridge had friends and family on other ships and stations. They sent personal messages describing what they had witnessed. The story was told and retold, growing more detailed with each telling. On the mining station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Supervisor Lee Minho received a message from his daughter who worked on a diplomatic vessel. She described how the aliens had shot an innocent dog without warning or reason. Minho read the message twice, then walked to his communications center and blocked all incoming signals from Nexari ships. Dr. Han So-young was working late in her laboratory on Mars when she heard about Max's death. The xenobiologist had spent years studying alien life forms, hoping to build bridges between species. She had lost her own dog when she was 12 years old, and the pain of that loss had never completely healed. She stood up from her desk and walked to the cabinet where she kept her research files about the Nexari. Without hesitation, she gathered every document, every sample, every piece of data she had collected about their species. She carried the files to the disposal unit and watched them burn. The next morning, Dr. Han sent a message to her colleagues throughout the scientific community. "I will not share any research with the Nexari," she wrote. "They have shown they cannot be trusted with life itself." Within days, similar messages were spreading through every field of human knowledge. Scientists, engineers, artists, and teachers all made the same decision. The flow of human information to the Nexari stopped completely. On the space station, New Tokyo, Administrator Park Soon-ho was dealing with his first Nexari trade request since the incident. A Nexari merchant ship had arrived carrying valuable crystals that human manufacturers desperately needed. The alien captain sent the usual polite messages requesting permission to dock and begin negotiations. Park Soon-ho looked at the message for a long time. His own family had owned dogs for generations. His daughter's pet had died of old age just 6 months earlier, and the whole family had mourned together for weeks. He typed a simple response to the Nexari ship. Request denied. Leave human space immediately. The alien captain sent back a confused reply asking for clarification. What had changed since their last successful trade mission? Was there some new regulation or fee that needed to be paid? Park Soon-ho did not answer. The space station's communication system showed dozens of incoming messages from the Nexari ship, but the administrator ignored them all. After 12 hours of being ignored, the alien vessel finally left. The same scene was playing out across human territory. On every world, every station, every ship, the response was identical. Silence. The Nexari tried different approaches. They sent gifts. They offered better trade deals. They even sent recordings of their most beautiful music and art. Nothing worked. Humans simply would not respond. Ambassador Velthar was becoming desperate. The Nexari leader had returned to its home ship after the disastrous first contact meeting, expecting to resolve the misunderstanding quickly. Instead, the situation was getting worse every day. The ambassador called a meeting with its advisors. We must understand what has gone wrong, Velthar said through the translator. Its light patterns showed deep concern and confusion. One small creature died. Why has this caused such an extreme reaction? Junior advisor Thixera had been studying human behavior patterns since the incident began. Unlike the other Nexari, Thixera was genuinely curious about alien psychology. I believe we have made a fundamental error in understanding, it said carefully. Explain, ordered Velthar. The creatures they called dogs are not simply animals to humans, Thixera continued. Based on my research into their communications and cultural records, these beings appear to hold emotional significance far beyond their practical value. Krixnall, the young Nexari who had shot Max, flickered with irritation. That makes no logical sense. It was a simple threat elimination. The humans should understand that we were protecting ourselves and them. But they do not see it that way, Thixera replied. In human culture, dogs are treated as family members. They form emotional bonds that last for many years. Killing a dog may be equivalent to killing a human child in their understanding. The meeting fell silent as the Nexari tried to process this information. Their species did not form emotional attachments to other life forms. The concept was alien to them. If this is true, said Velthar slowly, then we have committed what humans would consider murder. Meanwhile, the effects of the human silence were beginning to hurt the Nexari economy. Trade routes that had been profitable for months were suddenly closed. Scientific exchanges that had benefited both species came to an abrupt halt. Other alien civilizations began to notice the change and started asking questions. The Keth Republic, longtime allies of the Nexari, sent an inquiry about the situation. Why have the humans stopped all contact with your people? Asked the Keth ambassador. Our own trade with humanity has been affected because we are known to be your friends. The Nexari found themselves in an impossible position. They could not understand why the death of one small animal had caused such massive consequences. But they were beginning to realize that their ignorance might cost them everything they had gained from contact with humanity. On Earth, Admiral Jinwoo received daily reports about the spreading silence. Every human settlement had joined the boycott without being asked. No orders had been necessary. The response was instinctive and universal. Sir, said his aide, Lieutenant Choi Min-jae, we are receiving messages from dozens of alien species, asking about the situation. Some of them seem concerned about doing business with the Nexari if we consider them untrustworthy. Admiral Jinwoo nodded grimly. Good. Maybe they will learn something from this. He walked to the window of his office and looked out at the busy spaceport below. Ships were coming and going constantly, carrying people and goods between the stars. But not one of those ships was Nexari. The silence was holding, and it was growing stronger every day. 6 months had passed since Max died, and the silence from human space had become deafening. Ambassador Velthar stood in the command center of the main Nexari diplomatic ship, watching the economic reports scroll across the displays. The numbers painted a grim picture of their civilization's future. Trade income has dropped by 67%, reported economic advisor Zelkros. Its light patterns showed deep concern as it continued the briefing. Human technology and cultural products were our most profitable imports. Without access to their markets, we are facing serious shortages. The Nexari had not realized how dependent they had become on human goods. Earth's music had become wildly popular among young Nexari. Human medicines were proving more effective than traditional Nexari treatments. Most importantly, human manufacturing techniques were revolutionizing Nexari industry. All of that was gone now, cut off by the continuing silence from every human settlement in the galaxy. "What about our attempts to communicate through intermediary species?" asked Velthar. The ambassador's crystalline form flickered with frustrated energy as it paced around the command center. "The Keth Republic delivered our messages to 3 human colonies," replied communications specialist Norvek. "The humans read the messages, but sent no replies. They simply deleted our communications without comment." Junior advisor Thixara had spent the last 6 months studying everything available about human culture and psychology. Its research had led to disturbing discoveries that the other Nexari were reluctant to accept. "Ambassador," Thixara said carefully, "I have completed my analysis of human emotional structures regarding their companion animals. The situation is far more serious than we initially understood." "Explain your findings," ordered Velthar. Thixara activated a holographic display showing images and videos collected from human data networks. Dogs have lived with humans for over 15,000 Earth years. They are not pets in the way we understand that concept. They are family members with full emotional status. The display showed human children playing with dogs, soldiers being comforted by military dogs, elderly humans whose dogs were their only companions. Video after video demonstrated the deep bonds between the two species. "Look at this," Thixara continued, highlighting a human news report about a dog who had saved a child from drowning. Humans consider dogs to be heroes, protectors, and loyal friends. When a dog dies, humans mourn exactly as they would for another human. Crixnall, who had been silent during most of these briefings, finally spoke up. "This emotional reaction seems excessive for a simple animal. How can an entire species be so irrational?" "That is exactly the wrong way to think about this," Thixara replied firmly. "To humans, there was nothing simple about what you killed. Max was not just an animal to those crew members. He was their friend, their companion, their source of comfort during difficult missions in deep space." The junior advisor changed the display to show human literature and art featuring dogs. Stories of loyalty that lasted beyond death, paintings of humans and dogs working together, songs about the love between species. In human culture, harming a dog without cause is considered one of the most evil acts possible, Thixara explained. It demonstrates a complete lack of empathy and understanding. They judge character based on how someone treats innocent creatures. Ambassador Velthar studied the information with growing horror. "Are you saying that by killing their dog, we have proven ourselves to be evil in their eyes?" "Worse than that," Thixara answered. "We proved that we cannot be trusted with anything they consider precious. If we would kill an innocent, loyal creature without warning, what might we do to humans themselves?" The realization was spreading through the Nexari leadership like a virus. They had not simply made a diplomatic mistake. They had revealed themselves to be fundamentally incompatible with human values. Meanwhile, the effects of the human boycott were spreading beyond just the Nexari. Other alien species were beginning to notice the situation and draw their own conclusions. The Altarian Trade Consortium sent a formal inquiry to Nexari leadership. Ambassador Kelvok of the Altarians was direct in his questions. The humans have completely severed contact with your people. This is unprecedented in galactic diplomacy. What exactly did you do to provoke such a response? When the Nexari explained about the dog incident, Kelvok's response was immediate and harsh. You killed their companion animal without provocation, and you wonder why they will not speak to you? The Altarian government immediately suspended several joint projects with the Nexari. The Zephyrian Empire, known for their own close relationships with symbiotic creatures, were even more outraged. Any species that would casually destroy another's bonded companion cannot be trusted, declared High Counselor Mithera. We are reconsidering all agreements with the Nexari Commonwealth. On the frontier colony of New Kepler, Commander Bei Taejun was dealing with his own Nexari problem. A small Nexari exploration vessel had been sending distress signals for 3 days. The ship had suffered engine failure and was requesting emergency assistance. Taejun's first instinct was to help. Humans had a long tradition of rescuing anyone in space, regardless of species or politics. But every time he started to authorize a rescue mission, he thought about Max lying dead on the conference room floor. His communications officer, Sergeant Nam Jisoo, brought him the latest message from the stranded Nexari ship. Sir, they are saying their life support will fail within 6 hours. They are begging for help. Taejun read the message and felt the weight of command on his shoulders. Letting the Nexari die would make humans no better than the aliens who had killed Max. But helping them might send the wrong message about the consequences of their actions. Finally, he made his decision. Send a rescue ship, he ordered. But tell the crew they are not to speak to the Nexari. Bring them to safety and drop them off at the nearest neutral station. No conversation, no explanation, no comfort. The rescue was completed in complete silence. Human rescuers pulled the Nexari from their dying ship and transported them to safety without saying a single word. The confused aliens tried repeatedly to thank their saviors and ask questions about the human response to the dog incident. The humans ignored every attempt at communication. They performed their duty as rescuers, but they offered no friendship, no warmth, no indication that relations between the species could ever be repaired. Back in Nexari space, desperate measures were being considered. Some advisors suggested trying to obtain dogs from other sources to offer as replacements to humanity. Others proposed sending formal apologies and offers of compensation. These approaches will not work, Thixera warned during a high-level strategy meeting. Humans do not see dogs as replaceable objects. Offering them other dogs would be like offering to replace their murdered children. It would only make the situation worse. Then what do you suggest? Asked Velthar in frustration. I believe we need to demonstrate that we truly understand what we have done, Thixera replied. But I do not know if such understanding is even possible for our species. We do not form emotional bonds the way humans do. We may be fundamentally incapable of comprehending their grief. The Nexari economy continued to decline. Unemployment was rising as factories that depended on human trade were forced to close. Social unrest was beginning to appear in some Nexari settlements as citizens demanded answers from their government. Other alien civilizations were starting to view the Nexari as diplomatically toxic. Trade agreements were being canceled. Cultural exchanges were suspended. The isolation that had begun with human silence was spreading throughout the galaxy. And still, from human space, there came nothing but silence. No threats, no demands, no negotiations. Just the absolute quiet of a species that had been wounded in a way the Nexari were only beginning to understand. The silence was becoming more powerful than any weapon, more devastating than any war. It was the sound of trust dying, and everyone in the galaxy could hear it. 1 full year had passed since Max died on the Harmony Bridge. Junior advisor Thixera stood before the Nexari High Council, holding the most important report in their species' history. The council chamber was filled with the highest-ranking members of Nexari society, their crystalline forms pulsing with nervous energy. Honored council members, Thixera began, I have completed my comprehensive study of human culture and psychology. What I have discovered will change how we understand not just humans, but ourselves. Supreme Chancellor Vorthak's light patterns showed impatience. Get to the point, Junior Advisor. Our civilization is collapsing because of this human silence. What have you learned that can help us? Thyxera activated the massive holographic display that filled the center of the council chamber. Images of humans and dogs throughout history appeared in the air above them. Soldiers and their war dogs, children and their puppies, elderly humans, whose dogs were their only companions. We did not simply kill an animal, Thyxera said quietly. We murdered a family member in front of his pack. In human understanding, what Crixnell did was equivalent to walking into a peaceful meeting and shooting a child. The council chamber fell silent. Even the ambient humming of the building system seemed to pause as the full weight of this revelation settled over the Nexari leadership.
Furthermore, Thyxera continued, humans judge the moral character of individuals and entire species based on how they treat innocent creatures. By killing Max without cause, we proved ourselves to be fundamentally evil in their eyes. Chancellor.
Vorthak's patterns flickered with horror. But surely they understand it was a mistake, a misunderstanding of intentions. That makes it worse, not better, Thyxera replied. Humans believe that anyone who could misread a friendly, happy dog as a threat cannot be trusted with anything precious. If we cannot recognize innocence and loyalty, how can they trust us? With their children, their homes, their lives? The economic reports that followed painted a picture of complete disaster. Nexari civilization was facing its worst crisis in 1,000 years. Without human trade and technology, their society was beginning to collapse. Ambassador Velthar rose from its position in the council. What do we do? How do we fix this? I do not believe it can be fixed, Thyxera answered honestly. Trust, once broken by such a fundamental violation of values, may take generations to heal. But perhaps we can at least show that we understand our error. After hours of debate, the council reached a decision that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Ambassador Velthar would travel to Earth alone and unarmed, to face whatever judgment humanity chose to deliver. On Earth, President Nam Jiwan was meeting with the survivors from the Harmony Bridge. Captain Park Woojin looked older than his years. The weight of witnessing Max's death and the diplomatic crisis that followed had marked him deeply. Sir, Woojin said quietly, they are requesting permission for one ship to approach Earth. Ambassador Velthar wants to meet with human leadership. Admiral Seo Jinwoo, who was attending the meeting, shook his head. It could be a trap, or another misunderstanding waiting to happen. But President Nam was curious about what the Nexari leader wanted after a full year of silence. Let them come. But they land at the isolated facility in Antarctica. No weapons, no escort, minimal contact. 3 days later, Ambassador Velthar's small ship touched down on the ice-covered landing pad at the most remote diplomatic facility on Earth. The Nexari leader emerged alone, carrying something wrapped in simple cloth. The human delegation waiting inside the facility was small. President Nam, Admiral Jinwoo, Captain Woojin, and Dr. Yoon Minhyuk, a philosopher who specialized in ethics and interspecies relations. Velthar entered the meeting room moving slowly and carefully. Its usual proud bearing was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. The ambassador approached the human delegation and stopped several feet away. I have come to give you this, Velthar said through its translator. The alien unwrapped the cloth bundle to reveal a memorial stone carved from the finest Nexari crystal. Max's image was etched into the surface with perfect detail, along with words in both human and Nexari script. Max, faithful companion, we are sorry. The ambassador placed the memorial on the table between them. We understand now what we took from you. We understand that we did not simply kill an animal. We murdered a member of your family. President Nam looked at the memorial, stoned for a long time before speaking. You come here after a year of silence with a piece of carved rock and think that makes everything better? No, Velthar replied immediately. Nothing can make this better. Nothing can bring back the innocent life we destroyed. We come here not seeking forgiveness, but hoping you will know that we finally understand our crime." Captain Wu Jin stepped forward. His voice was rough with emotion as he spoke. Max was the best of us. He was loyal, loving, and trusting. He never hurt anyone in his entire life. He brought joy and comfort to everyone he met. And your people killed him because they were afraid of his happiness. "Yes," said Velthar simply. "We killed innocence and loyalty because we could not recognize them. We destroyed something beautiful because we saw only threat where there was only love." Dr. Yoon spoke next. "What you did revealed something about your species that cannot be unchanged. You showed us that you are capable of casual cruelty toward the innocent. How can we ever trust you again?" Ambassador Velthar's light patterns dimmed to almost nothing. "We cannot ask for trust. We have proven ourselves unworthy of it. But perhaps our children or their children might someday prove different." The meeting continued for hours. The Nexari leader listened as the humans explained the depth of the human-animal bond, the role of dogs in their civilization, and why Max's death had triggered such a universal response. "Every human who heard about Max's death felt it personally," explained Admiral Jinwoo. "Because every human has loved a dog or knows someone who has. You did not just kill one dog. You killed every dog that ever lived in human memory." As the day ended, Velthar prepared to leave. "We will return to our space and leave you in peace. We will tell our people that the silence will continue as it should. Perhaps in time, when we have learned to value innocent life as you do, we might be worthy of speaking to you again." The Nexari ship lifted off from Antarctica and began its journey back to alien space. But something had changed. The message Velthar carried back was not one of hope for quick reconciliation, but of understanding and acceptance of consequences. Back on the Harmony Bridge, now serving as a memorial ship, Captain Wu Jin stood in the conference room where Max had died. A small garden had been created in the corner where the dog used to sleep. Max's favorite toy sat beside a plaque that read, "In memory of Max, who reminded us that love and loyalty are the most precious things in the universe." The silence from human space continued, but now it carried a different meaning. It was no longer just anger and grief. It was a lesson being taught to the galaxy about the value of innocent life and the consequences of destroying it without cause. Other alien species had been watching and learning. The story of Max and the human response had spread throughout known space. It became a tale told to young aliens about the importance of recognizing and protecting innocence. The Nexari civilization slowly began to rebuild, but they were forever changed. They created new laws protecting innocent creatures. They taught their children about the bonds between different species. They learned to value loyalty and love in ways they never had before. And in the quiet of space, the silence continued. Not forever, perhaps, but for as long as it took for the memory of Max to teach the galaxy that some things are too precious to be destroyed by fear or misunderstanding. The German shepherd who had wanted nothing more than a drink of water had become the most important dog other worlds would ever hear about, his memory protecting countless innocent creatures across the stars.